Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the final session for today. I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker. His name is Timothy Knox. He is not only my coworker, he's a great friend. He is also super smart. Fun fact about him, he holds a patent here at Jamf, which is super, super cool. So he will be here to discuss what we've learned from single sign-on, SSO on iOS, and he also promised we will get this going because I think this is what stands between you all and some happy hours and some partying. So please give a warm welcome to my dear friend and colleague, Tim Knox.
There I am. Hello. Yep, it's just me today, and I know that I'm the last session before the party, so we're going to get through this as quick as possible. It's probably going to take about 25 minutes. We're going to talk about single sign-on on mobile devices specifically. So if you're here for Mac stuff, in the wrong room. That's me. I'm Tim. I've been at Jamf for 10 years as of about 2 weeks ago, and before that, I was a Jamf administrator, so I've been using the tool for quite some time. Totally focused on the mobile side of the fence, focused on our industry solutions. So a lot of the stuff that is not completely supported in the MDM space, we try to find where we can fill some of those gaps. So we're going to start by talking just about some terminology, just to level set the expectations of what it is that we're going to be talking about. Going to do an example workflow, talk about some new features, and I know I have that gotcha as the last bullet point on there, but honestly, I'll be sprinkling the gotchas throughout the entire thing, because they'll come up and get you. That's why they're called gotchas. So let's talk terms. Starting with single sign-on. This is a surprisingly ill-used term. People will use it to define just about anything. Today, and going forward talking about mobile devices specifically in my world, single sign-on is the idea of signing in once to an app and then having that authentication chain get passed to all the apps that are on the device. I know it seems really obvious, single sign on once, but believe me, people use this to describe just about everything. One token to rule them all, and single sign out, or SLO. This is another really important thing to talk about. It is dramatically more complicated than signing on. Apps are always looking for tokens. They're trying to understand who is trying to log into you. They want to help you get onboarded. They want to help you log in. Every app designer out there wants to make it as easy as possible to get you into their system. But they are not always looking to see if that token has been revoked. They're not always able to understand why this token is no longer valid, and so it just throw up their hands and go, I don't know. And it requires the IDP, the SSOE app, and the app itself to all play nice together. So you got to get all these different companies to all understand this whole authentication chain and to make sure that they understand what logout is. The single sign-on extension. Now that is using it as a configuration profile that is getting deployed typically by MDM to use that framework, right? To use the AS authorization single sign-on framework to be able to grant access to the app so the apps understand what that token is. The config profile does a few things. It will let you understand what IDP it's coming from. It'll let you understand whether it's a redirect or whether it's a Kerberos type of authentication. There are things that you can define in there that will help the apps understand the token. Also, that is a capital E at the end for SSOE. Just the style guide, if you want to put this in your documentation, it is an SSOE. The extension is an important word in there. We don't want to minimize that. Single sign-on extension, very important. Platform SSO. This has been talking about a lot today. It's about password sync. It's system-wide. It's Mac OS, and not at all what we are talking about today. It is a whole different thing. We're talking about Setup and Reset, which is an app that is being used to generate these tokens. If you want to talk single sign-on platform stuff, they're all over the place. They'll be there tomorrow too. Setup and Reset. I was lucky enough to be on the stage eons ago and did the very first session very similar to this, talking about Setup and Reset when we first announced it. It grants you the ability to populate a single extension attribute from the device. And looking back, I can't believe how revolutionary that was that we thought back then, because we've come so much further than the idea of just generating one value and then writing it into Jamf Pro and having that stuff. But we've built a ton on top of Setup and Reset. I do think that if you're just looking for basic Setup and Reset, though, look into Mobile Assist. If you haven't seen Mobile Assist, I really should have put a slide that actually showed it. I didn't. Sorry, I can show it to you tomorrow. But Mobile Assist is levels beyond what Setup and Reset was. It is an app that acts the same way as Setup and Reset. It can write values into Jamf Pro from the device. So you can write your name, you can do a drop-down, you can do 4 extension attributes, you can do building, you can do department, you can change all the words, all the icons, all the colors, everything about this app. And you can download it from the App Store for free today. It was actually made publicly available just a couple of days ago. So if you're looking for the very straightforward, non-authenticated setup and reset type thing, look into Mobile Assist. It's going to be a much better experience for you, in my opinion. Single login. So this is what I'm actually talking about today, the real part of it. It is part of the setup and reset apps, but it's a workflow within those apps. And this is incredibly confusing. Talk to anybody on the sales team in Jamf, they will be confused about whether it's a setup or whether it's reset or whether it's single login. They all are kind of a jumble of terms. So just because I know this is being recorded and I can point to it later, single login is the workflow we're talking about. If you have a problem with single login and you're calling support, say the word single login and you'll go to the right people. If you say the word setup, it could be anywhere, because setup is a different kind of thing, even though it's all wrapped up into the same stuff. And it is, as it says there, actually the subject to today. Single login is the front end that uses Authenticator, which is the actual SSOE extension app, to generate the token. So it is the front end tool that we can use to write the values into Jamf Pro. But I thought the title of this session was what we've learned from single sign-on. So we learned that we needed to iterate. That is really the biggest and most important thing that we learned throughout the years of using this workflow. Because we really haven't done a whole heck of a lot with it when you look at what we've done. We've really only added a login screen to setup and reset. So we've made some changes and we've made some adjustments. There's no actual really new thing I'm going to be announcing today. It's stuff that's been new over the last year or so that maybe we haven't talked about publicly, but I want to make sure that everybody has been able to see it. So what works and doesn't work using this workflow? The best path forward, and the thing that we really want to have with this. Now, that could be a shared device. It could be a device that maybe you've fully provisioned this device, you've got it up to date, you've got it secured, you're running all the right operating system, you're running all the right apps, everything is good to go. You just need to assign a user to it. That's a really good use for this workflow. Hand it to somebody, they can log in, now you've got the user information, and then you can just continue about your day, and that's their device forever. Or it could be a shared type experience, which I'll go into. The workflow would be you open Jamf Setup and you tap to log in, and all that's brandable and you can change the way it looks. And this is where I'm stopping this video here, because we have this new feature, QR code plus PIN, something that Microsoft released a little while ago, and we do fully support it. You can allow your users to have a QR code as their ID. I lost my thing. That's probably not the right way to say that. Here we go. All right, there you go. Thank you.
Tim, I'll give you this if you want to. Yeah, let me give you this.
I'm going to turn the power off on this guy.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you, God. All right, so I stopped here because this is the new feature. It is QR code plus PIN. The way it works on the Entra side is that the Entra administrators can say, this is your QR code, and then you get an assigned PIN at first, but then you would set it to what the user actually uses. So what the user experience would be is they would allow the camera. I bet I have to hit this twice. Yes. And then you would scan the QR code. It's just way faster than having to type in your username and password every time. And we do have this in production in some environments today. Then you type in your PIN. Now the other thing to note when you're recording stuff, doesn't obfuscate that passcode. So you all saw that my passcode is 1234, 1234. Just want to make sure that that's also on the recording. And then it grabs your role from Entra and writes that as that single value that setup has. And now you can start triggering some automations from that based on smart group membership. Really fast, really easy to use. There's some idiosyncrasies there, like you have to hit the allow camera button. It's a little annoying, but it's one little step that's still not having to type in your whole name. The QR code probably needs to be refreshed at some point, and it has to be available for users to actually be able to see. It is unique to every user as well, and you can also expire the PIN code and have them generate a new one if that's the way you'd rather go. And it's totally optional. If you want to, let's say the PIN code's, the QR code's been destroyed for whatever reason, you can just hit sign in some other way and then use your username and password as a failover. So it's not a, this is your only path forward. So yeah, all the things I just said, because I didn't actually hit advance. Collects the username, populates the extension attribute. It does keep the history of this login event. So if you go to your device record and go to history and go to user and location or user history, it will show you the events of the login and the events of the log out. So you do have a historical record of when they logged in, what device they logged into, and you can probably export that to your SIEM or your SOAR, just so you can have a nice, easy record of who's been using these devices, which I think is important. And then it generates an SSO token. So then when you close the app, you now have a configuration profile. You've got a different wallpaper. I'm going to actually go through the process of creating that passcode. And every app that supports it will be logged in. And that's the other key. You have to have the apps that actually support this. There are ways we can help get people to support it. There's documentation out there in the world. I'm actually going to have at the very last slide, I've got some QR codes that you can scan that take you to the documentation in order to add that functionality to these apps. Edge is a surprisingly good experience with this. It hurts my tummy every time I say it, but I really do like the Edge browser in this particular experience because it remembers your bookmarks and remembers your history, and that's unique to you. So when you log out, that goes away, and then the next person, when they log in, they have their history and they have their bookmarks. That can be really, really valuable. And Edge actually has some really good app config keys now that you can throw in there. You can do all sorts of stuff like set a go back to the home page timer out. You can set the home screen. You can set, or the home page of the browser. You can set private browsing. You can do all sorts of things with the browser that you cannot do as easily with other browsers, Safari. But Edge works really well. And then logging out. So same kind of experience. You would open Reset. If I was king of the world, we would combine those two apps together so you don't have two apps to maintain. I'm just going to put that on the recording as well. And then you would tap to end your session. This pulls the SSO token, clears the extension attribute, clears the passcode that you've set, puts you back into that null state, waiting to be used by the next person to pick it up and repeat that process forever and ever and ever and ever. Or you could use return to service. Return to service will absolutely log you out of every single app that you've been logged into because it's going to remove all that stuff. There's some gotchas with this one as well. You can't use it with a Wi-Fi profile that does certificate-based type connections. You'll have to use some kind of provisioning profile or provisioning network to get it back online again. But if you're able to do that, it's a really smooth experience for the end user. Hit the big red button. It will then erase all content and settings. It will remember the language and region. It will get you back on the Wi-Fi. And as of 26, it will remember the managed bundle IDs of the device that you've defined. There's some gotchas for that too, as long as I've got your attention. You do need a bootstrap token in order for it to remember those managed bundles that it's trying to retain. So you'll need to wipe the device once for it to get that bootstrap token in order for it to keep those apps on the device. But it does speed things up dramatically. It's not instant, it's not 1 minute, but it is like 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And especially if you've got big apps, much, much faster. All right, so what do you need for that flow? You need setup as an enterprise app. That's fairly straightforward. You just register it in Entra. You need an extension attribute that you're going to populate with the role. You need a few smart groups, change the context of the device based on what the user's logged into or logged out of, and you'll need the null group as well. You need compatible apps. That's also really, I cannot stress that enough. If you do not have the compatible apps, the previous user is probably going to be still logged in. Not a great experience for a shared device. Fine for a one-to-one deployment, but not great for a shared device. And you need shared device compliance. Now, what's shared device compliance? That is another fairly new feature as of January 23rd of this year. It was a very important date for me because I've been waiting for that for an awfully long time. It allows you to put Authenticator, which is actually the single sign-on extension app that does all the tokens, to be placed into shared mode without the user needing to touch the device, or the administrator needing to touch the device, or anybody needing to touch that device. It will register the device in Intune, and then send that registration status back to Jamf that says, this is a known good device, we can register it, and now I can put you in shared mode. And it will do that for you. And we really want to do that because doing this manually is really hard. You don't want to have to log into every single device. It would also prevent you from using return to service as a function because you would have to get it back into shared mode again. It does need to be in this mode and available for it to work. All right, I think I make this go big. I do. Okay, so this is a video of the whole setup of shared device compliance. This is going to walk you through the entire thing from tip to tail. It's over in Settings. Find Device Compliance, and you'll notice that there's a new button down there called Shared Device Compliance. It is below the other two. I don't know why I showed that in the video. I felt like it was important. And you need to find a compliant group. You need that compliant group to be a different group than the one that's defined by macOS or iPadOS compliance. They just need to be different. It is using the exact same channel as device compliance, shared device compliance is, but it gets real confused if it's the same exact smart group. They can have the same members, but if it's the same exact smart group, the poor thing gets confused, and it doesn't really work very well. This is the other really important thing to note here, this custom configuration profile. One of the things that we learned by doing this is that we needed to have some flexibility, and we needed to give you all some flexibility on what this plist looks like. When we originally rolled it out, we had only defined 2 prefixes in order for it to work. Jamf apps for some reason, and Microsoft apps, and that was it. We had defined that, it was hard-coded and uneditable. And so when people started to roll this out in production, they were realizing that their apps that weren't one of those 2 kinds of apps weren't working. And it's because we hadn't allowed them to. So now we've changed it so that the default plist that is being generated by this device compliance is all managed apps are allowed. Just blanket, everybody's good. If you're a managed app, you're allowed to have SSO. Everything's fine. But maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want some flexibility. Maybe you want that QR code plus PIN. That requires a custom plist and a little addition of this plist file in order for that functionality to work, to push it to the camera instead of the default of the username and the password. There's a bunch of stuff you can do with this, and I do have a link to this page in my QR code as well. But I'm going to read it right from here so I don't mess this up. You can enable single sign-on for all your apps. You can enable them for some. You can enable for specific bundle ID prefixes. You can disable specific apps. You can enable browser SSO interaction. This is mostly for apps that don't use MCell. You can use that browser experience to sort of do the initial bootstrapping to get that app to accept the token. You can disable explicit prompts, and there's a few other things that you can do in that. But you just create the custom plist, you upload it to that device compliance pane, and then it will use that instead of the default of all managed apps. So once you've figured out your compliant group, you've figured out your custom plist, I'm not using it, I'm using the default one, you flip the little switch in the top right-hand corner. This is the step that almost everybody forgets, including myself, because it's not save for some reason. It's the little clickety-click in the top right-hand corner to make it go. Once you do that, it will then start to redirect you to all of the things that you need to do to establish that connection between Jamf and Azure. Some permissions need to be requested. You do need to be some level of administrator in order to make that connection happen. So if you're not an Azure admin, you got to go find a buddy and have them approve those things. You approve one, and then you get redirected again, and you accept those, and you get redirected again, and then you're going to set your compliance in, it's actually in Intune. Because what it's doing is it's doing a registration of the device in there, which actually gives them better visibility to what's happening on these devices and what's happening with those compliance statuses. The other important thing to note is that you can only have one MDM who uses this channel at a time. So if you're using Intune or some other MDM for this specific channel, the shared device compliance, it's going to get grumpy with you, and it's not going to let you do that. So you got to let us have it if you want us to do that particular workflow. Otherwise, you're stuck doing this manually. And you can see this is what it looks like inside. You've got some some basic settings that you need to set up in there. Any Azure admin should be able to do this fairly easily, and an Azure admin has to do this anyway, so they'll be able to set that up for you. Plus, it's documented. And then once it's done, it will report itself back to the compliance pane, and you're good to go. You will now have a shared device compliance profile, which will get placed on the device without you needing to do anything. And as long as this is in place, if you have Authenticator in place, it'll put it in shared mode. It's really important for troubleshooting to look there if it's not putting in shared mode automatically. You need to make sure that profile is on that device. You can create smart group logics around this too, so you can have this be part of your compliance status for some other function, or you can just understand that your devices are in this group, and so because they have that profile. To reiterate, one MDM is allowed. It is really important to remember that. You do not need to create your own configuration profile unless you make a custom plist. So if you've been doing this in the past and you've been doing things manually, pull that configuration profile out of your deployment. Use the one that's coming from shared device compliance. There are some minor app config changes, like you don't need to set the one for Authenticator because it's just going to do it. You don't really need to set any other app configs for any of the Microsoft apps. It'll just understand the token. Most apps just kind of get it if they're OIDC compliant. It is a non-removable profile. You can't just unscope it. You'll probably need to nuke the device in order to get it to redeploy the profile if you need to do that for whatever reason. And as I said before, it is reportable. All right, so the old way. It was a manual configuration profile. The administrator was needed for shared mode. Return to service was not a feasible solution, and it was not a reportable kind of situation. So the new way is actually significantly better. Being able to do this programmatically, being able to make it an easily scalable thing and be able to place this device in shared mode is super duper important. But there's another lesson we learned. This is another kind of, boy, we really should have thought of that kind of moment. It is these. We need to make this opt-in. Shared device compliance needed to be something that we allow our users to go, oh yeah, we totally wanted to do that, and we really meant it. We did not do that. So when we first rolled this out, we had a couple of customers. I don't see Avery in here, but he was one of my people who had this experience. His devices were no longer being allowed to log in because they needed to have this key. And this key is now something we had to add. We did actually replace it we released it pretty quick. I think setup 3.1.1 had this key as an allowed. But if you do want to use this methodology, set this value to true. It's just another app config that you need to put into setup because it's going to make sure that setup is checking to see if the device is registered, checking to see if Authenticator's in shared mode before allowing you to go on. It was doing that by default before, and it was a real drag when you didn't have Authenticator in place intentionally. It was just a different way of doing things. There are some complementary tools, which maybe actually do show this. That's cool. Yeah, way to think of that, Tim. Mobile Assist, that's the app that you could have a single sign-on kind of experience and then have a second step of being able to do Mobile Assist to log in more completely. I'm going to double-click, boop, boop. Mobile Assist will also allow you to do maybe somebody's logged in and they have set their passcode and then they've gone home for the day because they just forgot to log out, or they just didn't want to, or they just threw the phone down and went home. Mobile Assist can allow you to do some very, very simple MDM commands from a control device to a target device. So you don't have to worry as much that somebody has gone home for the day, because the control device can scan the QR code of the target device and clear that passcode. Or maybe it'll restart the device or return to service that device, which is probably the most useful thing for this workflow. There are some other things that make this a lot more useful. Jamf Automated Webhook Assistant and the tool called Brander. These are open source tools. You can find them on Git to be able to get that set up. I think that using Network Relay in this particular workflow is also incredibly valuable. You don't need to have a username associated with these devices in order to use Network Relay. It will just route traffic to the most safe place, and you don't need to have Jamf Trust or anything like that on the device at first. It can just log in, and you can have a userless device and still have it be secure. All right, so where was this? Where are we at? Oh, we got tons of time. Where was it most successful? Spare devices are absolutely super great. If you have a stack of spare devices at your office or at your school, if you've got a substitute teacher who wants to come in and use a device for a little while, or they've forgotten theirs, or they've broken theirs, being able to hand somebody a device, have them actually authenticate, and then be granted access to their tools is a great workflow. Shift workers, obviously. Entra users, really important. I'm sure I'm going to get this question. No, we don't support any other IDPs. Would love to. We don't support Okta. That is something that we are trying very hard to get working. We would love to have that support that entire workflow end to end. We would love for every IDP to be able to support that from end to end. Staged devices is also another really good one. If you've got a kitting company and you've got devices that are just going to sit someplace for a really long time, and they don't need to be associated with a user until maybe you've got some onboarding, or you've got some new staff changes, or it's the beginning of a school year, let those devices be ready and be set up and be ready to go, and then use that workflow to just get that user associated with that. Yeah, and this is where it isn't successful. Any IDP other than Entra does not work anywhere else. If you're making very, very, very frequent changes, if you've got a point of sale system and you need to log in for every single person who's walking up to that, and you've got a staff of 6 who are working on that same tool, you don't want to have them have to scan a QR code, type in a PIN code every single time they walk up to that device. Unsupported apps, always a problem. And requiring a timeout. I'm sure I'm going to get this question too, so I'm just going to get ahead of it. There's no way that we have to be able to do a timeout, so after you've logged in, after 8 hours, force a log out of the device. We'll get there, but there's no functionality for that today. These are your documents. Single login instruction documents, adding sign out to your app documents, and then the shared device compliant document. With these 3 things, with these 3 QR codes combined, you will have a workflow that will be able to do what I showed. Pick up a device, log in, authenticate. It's a very seamless experience. I have been showing this workflow, basically that exact video that we showed at the Expo Hall all week, which is why my voice sounds so tired, on convention Wi-Fi, and it works every time. Scan the QR code, PIN, you're in, and you just keep on cooking. Actually, where did I end up? My watch is dead. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to ask a lot of questions, or I'm going to ask for you to ask a lot of questions, or we can go straight to the party, whichever you guys want to do. Kat, do you have another mic back there? Okay, cool. Thoughts, questions? What you got? Yes, sir. Bam. That was simple. His question was, can you put the QR codes back on? And the answer was yes. Nope. Microphone number 2.
Testing. Okay, there we go. Related to single sign-on, single login, setup, reset. Any suggestions or roadmaps to bring those into blueprints, as in for the roles specifically? You know, we've rolled this out ourselves, and now we're up to like 9 different personas across the globe. Each one, you know, we're having to bundle different things with, you know, your layout, your config profiles, your launch restrictions, things like that. Any thoughts on putting them into blueprints? That way they're all kind of bundled there.
So is there any reason why you can't scope blueprints using this? Like use that, build a blueprint and then scope it to I guess you'd be looking for smart groups though. So it'd still be, what would you gain? Yeah.
Just a template. That way, you know, it's all there. Hey, this is what you can kind of do.
Okay, Kat, can you repeat that one more time? Because my speakers are pointed away from me and I'm having some trouble hearing what it is.
So more as a template. So, you know, there's a blueprint that just says Jamf Setup in there.
Yeah, okay.
And then it's got your layout, your launch restrictions, your backgrounds for that role.
Totally tracking. Yeah, so that's a great idea. And yes, we should totally do that. Because if we can make it very simple and just have a templated sort of blueprint that we can go, I want these kind of things in here. And then as long as they're authenticated with this particular kind of user, they get this blueprint. But bing. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Or no, I guess. But also, yeah, good idea.
Me?
Next person should ask way up here so we make Kat run all the way down here again.
That's a great idea. You guys need to do that. You said that there's no timeout for the workflow, but can that be forced with like an API call to force that?
Yes. No. We have to understand a few things in order to make a timeout work. And we have to understand when the device actually logged in and have to have that be something that we can collect and use as a value in order to know when the delta is, or when to set that integer to start that logout action from happening. There is a universal logout endpoint that we could touch in order to log that out, but we haven't had a lot of success about actually having it respect that across the device itself. The use of reset on the device does something else, and I don't know exactly what that is. But if we could, yeah, I mean, you build it.
Yeah, I think I might
Be
just.
great. I mean, I know you, Quentin. Let's do it.
All right, we'll figure it out, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've been wanting, and it's something that I think is really important because timeouts are important, and you can time individual users out on the Entra side, and you can time apps out on the actual side, but Jamf itself needs to be able to see that timestamp of that actual thing, the event from happening, and then be able to take action on that exact timestamp. And we don't really have a great mechanism to make that happen. Maybe we could set an actual, like, it happens at 8 o'clock, but that's not going to work at every industry. Healthcare sure isn't going to want to have an app that logs out at a specific time every day, because that might lead to trouble. Airlines isn't going to want to log out at an exact time every day for all your users across your fleet, because time zones are going to be a nightmare, and they might be in the air. So there's lots of reasons that would be a harder thing to do. So I gave you a lot of reasons not to do something, but I don't care. Go do it. Like, build it. It'd be great.
Any other questions? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We just started working on this there, and I think we might be setting us up to do the manual mode. So what they're telling us we have to do is create a global admin account, log into the Authenticator for each device before we can set it in share mode. Is that the manual mode you're talking about?
That's the manual I'm talking about. Yeah, you need to be a cloud device mobile administrator, which has a lot of rights behind it. And you have to have that person who has that level of authority touch every single piece of glass that you're deploying to put it in shared mode in order for that workflow to work. Or let the robots do it. Set up that shared device compliance to happen, and it'll just do that for you, which I think is going to be a better experience. Especially for troubleshooting. I mean, when I was in IT, the first thing I would do with troubleshoot a device is nuke it. So, like, if you had to then set it fully back up again by finding your administrator to have it touch that glass again, no, that way lies madness. All right. Oh, we got one.
Coming.
Got a question for you. You mentioned Intune.
Yeah.
So, if you're registering a device and it's going across, putting itself in Intune, does the user need to have an Intune license in order to license the device?
No, because it's not using a seat in Intune to make that happen. It's using the registration channel that Intune has and a integration that we built with them to send that registration back and forth. So it's not actually taking a seat over in Intune. There's no real management capabilities over there. You do need to have it, mostly because you have it anyway, because you're an Entra user. But yeah, it's not actually taking a seat.
Yes.
So if the device is in Intune already, is it sending the compliance information based on the compliance parameters that it's set up already?
Okay, I definitely didn't understand that with the speaker spacing this way. Can you say that again?
With the compliance parameter that is set up in Jamf for the shared device and the single sign-on method, is it sending compliance information in Intune for the administrators and security?
Yeah, and so it's doing two different things. There's the sort of standard device compliance, which you can use to set whatever you want that to be, like passcode and operating system and all that stuff. And you can use that to do device compliance with that channel, but the shared device compliance you can be a little loosey-goosey with. I just have it, all my devices that I want to be shared are part of a smart group that I then send as this is my compliant group, and it's not really doing any sort of like checking to make sure it's good to go. You may want to, but in my case, I just know that every device that's in this pre-stage is my shared device fleet. And so I'm just going to put a smart group that says if it's a part of that pre-stage, send that information over, get it registered with shared device compliance, and then you've got that. So it's compliance is doing, that word is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that particular workflow. I'm also, as I said, in the expo hall all day tomorrow starting about 7:30. So come find us and we'll walk you through anything else you want to see.
Any other questions?
Blam.
Okay, if you do want to ask Tim anything in private, he's still over here. Otherwise, it's beer o'clock. Yeah, and then you can also find him tomorrow. So can we give my dear friend Tim Knox one more round of applause for an amazing
Appreciate it.
presentation?